Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Making the Case. Welcome to those of you who are joining me on MTV. Welcome to those of you joining on Facebook Live, and of course, our listeners on Freedom Radio. A pleasant good evening to you. It's been a busy week, the first week back to school. And before I go into tonight's program, let me just apologize for not being here last week. I was away for work, but I am back and I'm very happy to be here with you again this evening. Tonight I want to talk to you and give some real examples about how untrustworthy the APNU AFC coalition have been. Now, these are the people that argue that 33 is not the majority of 65. And they argue this all the way to the CCJ, making all sorts of legal arguments, all sorts of mathematical gymnastics to make you think that there was some credibility in their arguments. And really what we saw was that it was nothing. It was exactly what you thought. 33 is the majority of 65. And so while they claim that they would be vindicated by the CCJ in fact ruled that the no confidence motion was in fact validly passed by our National Assembly. So what happened? You can't trust them. You can't trust anything that the members of this administration say. They said that the list is corrupted and that house to house is a must. Remember the threats of war and no elections without house to house, and they made it sound so sure this is exactly what's going to happen. But what happened? The commission met, and house to house in the way that this was being carried out has been stopped. And we are not hearing anything more about any war and not having free and fair elections, as they like to say, credible elections, if no house to house is being held, will be held. So we will still be going to elections without the house to house activity as proposed and was carried out, had started being carried out by GCOM. Again, misleading their supporters, making them think that the only way we could have free and fair elections in this country was through a house-to-house process. GCOM, the lawyer, Stanley Marcus, was there under the direction from the illegal GCOM chair, saying that this is the only way, telling the judges, this is the only way and the fastest way that we can get to elections. Lies, total lies, untrustworthy. You can't listen to anything they say and repeat it because it's only time for it to be proven wrong and ill-advised. They said that the PPP misled their supporters when we told our supporters not to participate in the activity in the way it was being carried out, which was to remove people from the list. The form in which they were using on the house-to-house activity was not the statutory form. And so we advised our supporters not to participate in the house-to-house activity because we knew that it was only time for the courts to stop the house-to-house activity in the form in which it was being carried out. And so the Chief Justice said that, look, you cannot remove persons from the list. So the integrity of the National Register of Registrants is being maintained. And so we were vindicated once again in advising our supporters, and they were misleading theirs and having them on various forms of social media, their supporters, peddling these lies about house to house is the only way to to have a credible list for elections. And so now we hear of the merging of the list of the names registered so far with the National Register of Registrants. And we are opposed to this simply because it is a redundant activity. If you have, I think the latest number I saw from DPI is 370,000 persons were registered. We can safely say that maybe 368,000 of those persons are already on the list. So it's only about 2,000 persons you have to now get on the list. And this could have easily been done through a claims and objection period, which is now what they're saying. That, oh, it's okay, yeah, we can go to, we'll extract the preliminary lists and go to a claims and objection period. But after this merger that they are now pushing for, which is completely redundant, as I said, 368,000 are most likely already on the list. So it's just a complete waste of time to have to compare the names that are already on the list and those that were newly registered to ensure that there are no duplications. So instead of going through this long, lengthy process and having to cross-match fingerprints and all of this, going to a claims and objections period, once again, like we were saying all along, just like everything else, you go to the claims and objections period, and those who are not registered or who need to change their address or their names or anything can go into a GCOM office and have those changes or get themselves registered for the upcoming elections. So all of this talk about merging the list and so on is simply another method, simply another tactic to delay the calling and holding of elections. Then we have so many misleading information in the media and even in the Chronicle, and none other than our Prime Minister Nagamutu saying that the house was not scrapped. These are the people who will tell you, that what you saw you didn't see and what you heard you didn't hear, and so nothing. Their complete track record is about lying and delaying. An untrustworthy bunch. You can't listen to them or regurgitate anything that they tell you, because it will eventually be proven to be a lie or some other misleading information. And so nothing they have ever said will happen has come to pass. They have lost. They have lost in the courts. They have lost on everything that they have argued. And the People's Progressive Party has been vindicated on everything that we went to the courts for. And imagine you have David Hines saying that the PPP should return to Parliament and extend the life of this government because we should be concerned about our image. Our image, he has an illegal president, an illegal cabinet. Since March 21, as the Chief Justice said, they were illegal since March 21 when elections were supposed to be held. So you have this bunch in office, and they've been illegal for months now, and running to the courts with all sorts of ridiculous arguments. But we should be concerned about our image, and we should participate in this illegality. We should go back and vote to extend their life and to now legitimize a government that has been illegitimate for months now, continues to violate our Constitution and disobey court orders. We also have Lincoln Lewis, who has jumped in now, saying Jagdeo, as the leader of the opposition, is not discharging his constitutional duty to assist with the governance of this country, and that Jagdeo should be held accountable for his actions. And in terms of assisting in the governance, he's referring to going back to Parliament and legitimizing this APNU AFC government. Now, is Lincoln Lewis serious? I mean, how do we take them serious? They should be talking to a mirror. Because imagine Lincoln Lewis talking about constitutional duty. I don't even know how those words can leave his lips when we have an illegal president and an illegal cabinet, and they continue to stall and delay elections, to operate as though it is business as usual, even though they themselves have admitted that they are on a different footing. They still continue to operate as though they are a legal government. And he's talking about constitutional duty. So I caution you, when you listen to these fellas, not to go and repeat these ridiculous arguments, because as I've highlighted many examples to show you that they are untrustworthy. Some of them, like Basil, don't know what they're talking about, and others just want to mislead you, like Nagamutu talking about house to house not being scrapped. It's a deliberate attempt to mislead the Guyanese people, and we must not and should not fall for it. And so hence I say they are an untrustworthy government. We have trusted them as a government with our resources, our natural resources, and we learned about, the last time I was here, I spoke about the 1% royalty that was negotiated in the Tullow oil contract. And then later on we found out that Trotman said he was ordered to sign that contract. This is beyond ridiculous. This is disappointing. This is angering. And every Guyanese should be upset about this. He was ordered. We don't know ordered by whom. We wish he could tell us that. We deserve to know ordered by whom, to just give away our resource. After the expose with the Exxon deal, the 18 million signing bonus, and all of the flaws that were eventually revealed by that contract, to go and make a worse deal. A worse deal. After having Jordan say that everybody was shooting in the dark, and well, we didn't have the experience and we didn't know. After all of these experts have weighed in on the Exxon contract, you then go and you sign a contract that is worse. It's 0% because they said 1%, but then the operator gets to redeem that 1%, so it's 0%. So we're not getting any royalty from the Tullow oil deal. And we are expected to stay quiet about this. Jagdeo is not supposed to talk about this. And if he talks about it, then he's not fulfilling his constitutional duty according to Lincoln Lewis. So we will continue to speak out on these things, because we believe that is our constitutional duty, to be the guardians of the resources of this country, to be the guardians of the rights of our people. And we will continue to expose the practices of this administration. And as we go into the election season, you will hear, I'm going to predict, because it's very predictable. It happened the last time I was on this program, 2 weeks ago. I was talking about policies that affect and will benefit all Guyanese, and then I had persons call in and said that I was talking or spewing racism without pointing to a single thing that I said that could even remotely be considered racist. So as we go into this election season, there are going to be about 3, or I think I have about 4 defenses that APNU will use to defend themselves against the PPP. And we know them because it's the same playbook that they're using since forever. So we have the first thing is the racism. When you can't call me and let's talk about the fact of the matter, or debate in a public place or on social media about the facts of the matter, they say they go to racism. That's the first defense that they usually go to. The PPP is a racist party. We were not the ones that talk about only giving work to a certain ethnicity of persons. That was Valda Lawrence. We are not out on the road talking about don't vote for this government because they are perceived to be of a certain ethnicity. They have their people on the ground, and we know it's been reported. They have their people, James Bond on the ground on this whisper campaign, talking about don't vote for the quote-unquote Kuli People Party. They're the ones doing it. They're the ones always invoking and using racism to their advantage, and they have the nerve to point the finger in our direction. So we must pay careful attention to this. Sit and analyze it for yourselves. Are you just going to listen to what these people say, or are you really going to assess what the situation is and what it has been? Who are the ones peddling racism? We don't get into that. We're sticking to our policies, and I will go through. I'm scrolling on the bottom of the screen there. We have some preliminary promises about what's going to be in our manifesto and what we will do once we assume office, and I will go through some of them a little later on. So I'm coming to that. So racism is their first line of defense when they can't argue on the facts. Then they say, oh, the PPP killed Afro-Guyanese, young Afro-Guyanese. These are the same old, worn-out arguments over and over. We have consistently been calling for a commission of inquiry into some of the deaths, but the list that they have is deeply, deeply flawed, because the list of these 400 Afro-Guyanese that they have in the public arena is deeply flawed. You have criminals on that list along with their victims, and calling for justice and investigation. We have been calling for the COI, but they didn't have a COI into that. They had a COI into Lindo Creek. They had a COI into the death of Walter Rodney, which they quickly ducked. We never heard back anything about that. And why should we? Because the WPA is now hand in glove with them, with the party that murdered their leader, Dr. Walter Rodney. And we have evidence like the phone conversation between Basil and Felix talking about the massacre at Agricola. I mean, these are things that if you really want to find out, the information is out there. That recording is on YouTube. You can go and look for it yourselves. And you hear about how Basil is telling Felix, you know, you saved us. You saved us on this one, you know, right after what happened at Agricola. And you have Felix saying to Basil in reply, saying, you know, you like how I spin that, no? You like how I spin that. So what could have possibly transpired there? And this is one of the killings that their supporters consistently point the finger at the PPP for. And yet, the evidence, all of the evidence points right back at the PNC. The same people who like to, they like to cry foul first. So we have the racism, you have PPP killing young Afro-Guyanese. That's what they use, because they can't talk about the corruption. They can't talk about what's going on with Patterson. They can't talk about what's going on with Kathy. They can't talk about what's going on with Simona Brooms. So they revert to these old stale rumors, because there is no truth to it. Then the third defense that they use is that, oh, you know, the PPP it encouraged a narco state. Guyana was a narco state. Yet not a single case of money laundering has been filed in their now 5th year in office. Guyana was such a narco state, and when they first assumed the office, they went on this witch hunt and said they're going to investigate all of those people with 4-story buildings or something like that, and you know, they're going after these money launderers, but no money launderer has yet been charged or dragged before the court. So another lie, another reason to not trust this administration, and so we're not to fall for these things again. These arguments should never find their way into any intelligent, educated conversation about how to move Guyana forward. These arguments should be totally rejected, because there is absolutely no truth in any of them. And the fourth one is when all else fails, you know, they love to show the kneeling photograph of David Granger praying, and you know, he's a good man, he's a praying man, etc. They like to go, that's the last resort now. So that's the four line of defense. But this good man, Granger, David Granger, continues every day to violate our Constitution. He disregards court orders. He refuses to call elections. He's using every tactic and all of his minions to delay elections, and then refusing, like I said, to obey court orders. But he's a good man. So no evidence there again. All the evidence points to the contrary, but yet these are the things that they use as their line of defense. Lies, all complete lies. So they will say whatever to hang on to power. And I mean, we could go on and on about the lies that were peddled by this administration. And now they're coming with these fake promises once again. I don't know how they expect persons to believe them now. Where is the law school that was promised by Basil Williams? You know, we're still waiting on the law school. As a matter of fact, several stories that were carried in the media recently, they were captioned, their caption was very misleading, and one of them, as we're on Basil and the law school, we saw a headline that says students welcome full scholarships to law school, and we saw a picture of Basil flanked by law students, and everybody assumed from the looks of it and from the headline that these law students were granted scholarships to Hugh Wooding Law School. A day or so after, one of the young women in the photograph took to social media, and she said she wanted to clear the air that she did not receive any such scholarship or any government grant of any amount to go to law school. They were simply invited to discuss whether they would be receptive to a scholarship. Now, who wouldn't be receptive to a scholarship? But that's what they were called there to do, to discuss whether the award of scholarship to them to the Hugh Wooding Law School would find favor with them. And of course, the students said, of course, we would welcome scholarships. And so the caption said, students welcome full scholarships to law school, as though they were given these scholarships. They were not. And so we have another instance again of them misleading the public and being completely untrustworthy. We had the decriminalization of marijuana, when we saw a whole bunch of articles and persons in the public talking about this government will decriminalize marijuana. In fact, nothing has been done. They need to go to Parliament to do that. So again, they're coming, talking off the top of their heads. Free university now is the new thing, the new popular thing. This APNU AFC government wants you to feel that though education is a priority for them. I cannot imagine a government that claims it values education and wants to promote education will tax that education. Let us not forget who put VAT on education. How can you say that you care about education and you want to tax it? You want it to cost people more. You don't value education if you do that. And they left it for an entire year. Despite the protests, despite the consultations, they left it for an entire year. Had parents at private schools pay that VAT, even though it was very, very difficult. Some parents had to take their children out of private school because they couldn't afford that extra money for VAT. And then 1 year after, to simply remove it, those people still had to pay that VAT, and of course they weren't refunded. The money went to the government. And so they want credit for removing VAT on education when they were the ones that put it in the first place. So education could never be the priority of a government that could even envision taxing it, much less implementing such a tax. They placed VAT on data. You talk about wanting to win the votes of young people, and we know young people are the users, mostly the users of technology, and you talk about promoting ICT, but you have VAT on data. Again, they say one thing and their actions point to the exact opposite. Free UG, like we said, is the new thing with them. That's their new promise. Free UG, yet fees at UG have skyrocketed. The last time, I think in 2014, just one small example, miscellaneous fees at the University of Guyana. In 2014, I believe it was $10,000 for the year. Miscellaneous fees at the University of Guyana now, less than 5 years later, is $50,000. You have 40%, $40,000 more you have to find just on miscellaneous fees. We're not talking tuition, we're not talking books or anything yet. But that is the burden that ordinary Guyanese have to feel, have to be under. That's the burden, that's the strain of the ordinary Guyanese to try to get a tertiary education at the University of Guyana. And they can just get up and say, free UG, all of a sudden. So they couldn't do it all this time, but they want to do it now. And we're not trying to match their bravado or trying to win people by making false promises. And so we have said that it is a measure that we are looking at, and we have we ran the numbers, and we are saying, yes, this is a real possibility, but within 5 years. We cannot do that on day one. We try to make realistic promises, and as long as we put it on paper, and I'm sure many of you have seen the scrolls that have gone up around Georgetown and other places with some of the measures we plan to reverse and some of the ones that we plan to implement. Free university education being one of them within the first 5 years. And we said that because we don't want to make false promises. We don't want to say on day one that we can do that, but we know for sure that it can be done and very possible within the first 5 years. And so we're not trying to outdo APNU in terms of what we say. We're not being irresponsible with the things that we promise Guyanese. We sit down and we carefully consider how to finance these things before you make promises to people. If you're going to tell somebody that this is what you will do, you better make sure that you can pay for it. You must know where the money is coming from. You must make sure that your budget is balanced. This government hasn't balanced a budget in their 4+ years in office. So you must make sure that your accounts are in order and that you can pay for these things when you go to people and tell them that I'll do X, Y, and Z. So some of the things, moving on from this administration and the things that they've been doing and their untrustworthiness and the lies that they peddle, moving on from that, I just want to talk for a few minutes before I go to the telephone lines about some of the things that we are prepared to do and that we have said we will do. One of the first is, like I mentioned before, VAT on data, that is gone. That will be reversed. We talk about the reversal of the 200 new taxes that were implemented by this administration. So that alone, taking the VAT off the over 200 items VAT and fees, that the new taxes that APNU AFC implemented, taking that off alone will help to put more money back in people's pockets. The removal of VAT from building materials, that was a very insensitive thing to do. In an economy that is contracting, you know, the last thing you do, any good economist will tell you, the last thing you do is raise taxes. You cannot raise taxes in an economy that is on the decline. So the removal of that from building materials like sand and stone and cement and so on, that were not previously there under the PPP administration but are there now, makes construction far more expensive. And so that sector, along with sugar and rice and mining and farming and all of these things, the construction industry has also slowed. because building materials now have become so expensive. We have the removal of export tax. Who in their right minds taxes export? How do you tax something that was locally produced or made? How do you tax that when to export it? So that is a brainless measure, and that will be removed as well. Of course, we have the reversal of VAT on light and water, which makes it so difficult for persons to make their utility bills at the end of the month. We all know electricity is burdensome as it is, and then to have to pay 14% VAT on that doesn't help the situation. So we have the reversal of VAT on light and water. We have the reversal of age limit on vehicles, which will make vehicles much more affordable. Persons can choose whatever vehicle they would like to bring in, whichever one that suits their pockets without any restrictions. We have the reversal of taxes on Guyanese miners, reverse the VAT on farming, mining, and forestry equipment, which has increased the costs of farming and mining and forestry, making it burdensome. We have the reversal of land rent and drainage and irrigation charges, which makes rice farming and cattle rearing harder, and we have pledged to offer assistance to these industries and for the rice industry. We have reduced cost of living. With the reversal alone of these taxes, without introducing any transformational project, the reversal alone on these 200 plus taxes and these other measures that I spoke about before will give persons more money in their pockets, will help to bring down their cost of living and give them a more disposable income, so that at the end of the month, persons can have a little extra money to put in their bank account, or if it's Christmas time, you can buy that Christmas present. You can take your family out to have a nice dinner. That's what you do with your disposable income. You improve your quality of life, not having to wonder, how do I make my salary work for this month, and then what am I going to do next month? What if somebody gets sick? What am I going to do? Where am I going to get the money from to go to the doctor? So, and talking about healthcare, no VAT on healthcare services. We plan to remove that as well, making that also more affordable. Then we have support for small businesses with grants and interest-free loans, such as, for example, we had an initiative like this, the WOW initiative, Women of Worth, that the People's Progressive Party had during their tenure, where women, the PPP collaborated with one of our local banks, and women were able to access loans to start up their small businesses at very, very low interest rates that help them that encourage entrepreneurship and help them to open businesses. We have the restoration of the bonus to our joint services. Our joint services, we know, certainly deserve that, and this administration, in a very uncaring, insensitive move, removed that from our joint services. We speak about apprenticeships and jobs for our youths, and support for women and other vulnerable groups. You may have seen I had a sit down with our presidential candidate, Mr. Irfan Ali, recently, and we spoke at length about support for women, professional women, working women, and he rolled out a lot of initiatives on how the People's Progressive Party will do that, offering support for women through daycare services, and so on, a slew of measures. We talked about how difficult single mothers find it to move from, if they're in a secretarial position, for example, to move up in the corporate world, to climb the ladder of success, to be able to take promotions because they are supported by their government and they are supported by the private sector. I highlighted that we need a cultural change in Guyana where we support women who are in the workplace. And government support is one, but we need a change in our culture where our men step up and support. Your wife has to stay at work one afternoon late for some assignment, cook that dinner so that, she doesn't have to then come home and do so. So, that is a Guyana that I dream of and that I hope to one day see in my lifetime. And I would like a government, and I would like to work to help that government make Guyana a better place. And I'll be preparing to take your calls. But before I go to the phone lines, let me just say, any more information you need is readily available. All you have to do is make the effort and go on YouTube. You'll see the interviews done by Irfan Ali. When the PPP publishes their manifesto, read it. We're going to have more than one version. So one will be some broader, general measures about what we're going to do, and then another edition will be a more detailed, technical version of how we're going to pay for these things and so on. So if you're genuinely interested in learning about our plans for Guyana and plans for the future, plans for the oil industry, how we plan to manage that for the benefit of all Guyanese, regardless of your race, your color, your creed, your religion, your ethnicity, your gender, elderly, it will benefit all of Guyana. If you want to find out more, get your hands on a copy of the manifesto when it is published and read it objectively. See how we plan to implement these measures, and then compare it to the one that will subsequently be published by APNU. And see for yourselves. Forget, for example, forget that you're looking at PPP or APNU. Just look at the policies. Have a look at the plans that we have for Guyana, and make an objective decision the next time we go to the polls. Let us vote. Let us vote on policy. Let us vote for transforming Guyana on a solid plan and a solid agenda, not on empty promises and who the loudest person in the room. So I'm going to go to the phone lines now. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I just turned on my television, so I don't know if you're speaking of a specific topic, but I'd like you to know that I was in Potential yesterday visiting a friend, and I'm seeing people doing house-to-house registration as it is until now. Weren't it supposed to stop?
Yes, it was stopped since the 31st of August.
I was in that area. Potential is on West Bank. I was visiting a friend.
Okay.
And I saw the GCOM people, the people that are doing registration, walking and asking for lot numbers and so on. So
okay.
all right. I want to give you all the information.
We'll look into that. But that activity ended on the 31st
Yes, well,
August. So
that's the knowledge that I have.
right.
I am aware of that, so
Okay.
I'm wondering why they're doing it again.
All right. So thank you for the information. We'll look into that.
Okay,
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
caller. Caller, good evening. Hello? Hello? Let's see who else we have on the phone lines here. Hello? Caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello.
Good evening.
Congratulations on the work you're doing then.
Thank you.
I just want to tell you about the public assistance I used to get.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, for like what, 2 years now, just stop it.
Public assistance.
Yeah.
For what specifically?
Pardon me?
For unemployment?
Yeah, I used to get it 2
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
And I had to stop it. I didn't know what it was. It looked me.
All right. So we'll definitely look into that. But public assistance is definitely in our manifesto.
I just stop it.
Well, they've stopped a lot of things. These policies are very uncaring to people like yourselves, and we will certainly have a look at that and include that in our
Because we got
manifesto.
a head office in town. And when I went there, and the man, he nearly fall over. The man picked me up. And my wife, let's see.
Okay. All right, caller. Thank you for sharing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for coming through. Caller, good evening.
Hello, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. You're on the air.
Good night, Susan.
Good night. I can hear you.
I am a strong PVP,
Okay.
I'm living up at the hoop,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay.
And I'm suggesting, right? I'm suggesting to put up a sign. Vote for PPP. I don't know if the police gonna lock me up.
No, you're free to do that. That's your democratic right. You have a right to do that. To support
I'm free to
whichever
do it.
party. Yes, sir.
My phone number, Susan. Susan.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
My phone number is 258
Yes.
0173.
Okay.
So if anything, you can give me a call.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming through.
Okay, good. Thank you, Susan.
All right. Hello? Caller, you're on the air.
Oh, yeah. I call you from number 2 canal.
Yes.
GPL sent a estimate bill for me for $13,000. I went in yesterday for query. They tell me I got paid the money.
Yes.
They can't give me a proper estimate for my bill because I want 400 something for the month.
You took in your bill and your reading to them?
No, well, Thursday I was carrying the reading.
Okay, okay.
I was video the meter and carrying me Thursday.
All right. Okay, okay, caller. Well, that's what we're talking about. You know, electricity is very high, and the VAT on electricity.
I come in on channel 14
Okay.
and put it on there with the bill.
All
And I
right.
know that a very seriously poor people think this building is a pensioner building.
I understand, caller. I understand, and there's so many more like you out there. You know. Thank you for coming through.
Okay, babe.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the complaints of so many Guyanese, you know, because the electricity itself is already high, and then to add 14% on that makes it even harder on poor people. Caller, good evening. Hello? Caller? Caller, good evening.
Hello.
Please turn on the volume of your television.
I need to share one message to you. The people here some drive the motorcycle and they make so much sound pollution in the west coast, and this will be stopped. And also, this country needs Hindi. Hindi in school and Hindi in college. And then, sure, victory.
Okay, caller. Hello? We lost that caller there. I take the caller's contribution and I will make a note of that. Caller, good evening. Hello? Hello? Seem to have lost that caller. And so the cries of ordinary Guyanese continue while this administration continues to mislead people, spread their lies and their propaganda. People have real issues to deal with every day, and we need to be having conversations about how to improve the lives of ordinary Guyanese, how to reduce the cost of living that is skyrocketing in this country. We have one of the highest costs of living in the region, and so per capita it's way too much, and it's getting out of control. Caller, good evening. Seem to be. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good night, Mr. Rodrigues. How are you?
Good night, I'm fine, thanks.
I was listening to Mr. Irfan Ali, and I also looking at the manifesto, right?
Yes.
Now, what I wanted to know, if this government use all the money, use some of the treasury money, where is the PPP going to get the money to do all of these things? I mean, we're not going to get all the money for now. Thank you.
Right, okay. So, thank you for that, caller. So, this is why we are going to have two editions of the manifesto. One will be a more popular version, and the other one will be a technical version, which will detail all of our plans and how we plan to pay for it. We have been working the numbers, and this is why it took so long for us to get the manifesto out there. But also, simultaneously, we had to be fighting this administration for them to hold elections, because they continue to violate our constitution every day. So we have that fight, and then at the same time, we're trying to address our minds on how we will better govern Guyana for the betterment of all Guyanese. And we know that we are going in there to an empty treasury. We know that. And so this is why we have to be careful with the things that we promise people. We don't want to make wild promises. We want to make sure that whatever we put in the manifesto, that we have financed it and that we know where the money will come from. $1.6 billion alone they have spent increased dietary expenses. $1.6 billion alone, additionally, they eat. So if we save that money alone, we can give the school children back their $10,000 grant. So trimming the fat is one way of, and getting rid of the excesses is one way that we can start to pay for some of these programs. And of course, we have other means by which we will finance the rest. But I assure you that these have been costed, and once we publish the manifestos, you can go take a look at it. Unlike when the PPP left office, where we left monies for certain projects, like the expansion of the Sheriff Street and the back road, that is not an APNO initiative. That was a PPP initiative, and the money was left there to do that. They're not paying for that. That was financed by the PPP. That money was left there. They didn't go in there to an empty treasury, and many other projects, the finances were already there. So we're going to be facing a very different situation after the next election, but we have done it in the past. The PPP has done it in 1992 when we took a bankrupt country and make it a profitable one. The PPP was not even, the Guyana was not even credit worthy. We couldn't even borrow money. We were completely on our own in 1992. And the People's Progressive Party was able to pull this country back, to give a new lease of life to this country. And we did it then, and we can do it now because we are in a better position now as a nation after 23 years under the PPP administration. And even though they have attempted to take us back to, or they are attempting to take us back to pre-1992, not only with the finances of this country, selling out our gold reserves and all of that, even though they're attempting to do so, and also attempting to take us back to dictatorial rule and rigging of elections, all of these things that they're doing pre-1992. Even though we have to fight and face the same struggle again, we are prepared to do so, we are qualified to do so, we're competent to do so, and we will be here to take office at the next election. I think I have, no? I am completely out of time again. My operator just signaled to me that nope, I can't take any more calls. I thank you once again for joining me this evening. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and thank you for your contributions tonight. Do have a safe week, and I'll see you next week.